Hello, my name is Andrew Westover, and I'm the Keith Haring Director of Education and Public Engagement at the New Museum. I join you today from the unceded land of Lenape people, and I'd like to begin by acknowledging and paying respect to Lenape people and elders and ancestors, past, present, and future. On behalf of the New Museum, I am glad to welcome you to today's roundtable conversation entitled Soft Water, Hard Stone, But I Know a Change is Gonna Come, with triennial artists Laurie Kang, Gabriela Mureb, and catalogue contributor and curator Raphael Fonseca, and moderator Bernardo Mosqueira, ISLAA Curatorial Fellow at the New Museum. Programs like this are core to the New Museum's work of advancing new art and new ideas. This program is presented in conjunction with the opening of the 2021 New Museum Triennial, which is currently on view. The exhibition is co-curated by Margot Norton, the New Museum's Alan and Lola Goldring curator, and Jamila James, senior curator at the Institute of Contemporary Art, Los Angeles. I would like to particularly thank Education and Public Engagement staff members Andrea Calderes and Derek Wright, as well as the entire New Museum team for their help bringing this program together. The New Museum's public programs are generously supported by the Bowery Council, and digital initiatives are supported by Hermione and David B. Heller. We also thank our members and supporters, like you, who help make these programs possible. I'll now share brief biographical notes about each of today's panelists. Gabriela Mureb lives and works in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Recent solo exhibitions of her work include Central Gallery. Mureb has participated in gallery shows at Faso in Rio, Museo de Arte do Rio, also in Rio, Parque Leng, Festival Municipal de, Festival Internacional de Música Experimental in Barcelona, and Centro Cultural in Sao Paulo. Mureb is part of the experimental music project MUTA. Laurie Kang lives and works in Toronto, Canada. Recent solo exhibitions of her work include Her Own Devices, Franz Kafka in Toronto, Eidetic Tides at the Southern Alberta Art Gallery, Pole at Oakville Galleries in Oakville, Canada, and Channeler at Interstate Projects in Brooklyn. Her work has been shown in group exhibitions at Sculpture Center, Remi Modern in Saskatoon, Canada, Q Art Foundation in New York, Cooper Cole in Toronto, and The Power Plant, also in Toronto. Raphael Fonseca is a researcher in the areas of curating, art history, art criticism, and education. He was curator of the Niterói Contemporary Art Museum, Rio de Janeiro, from 2017 to 2020, and is one of the curators of the next edition of the SescVideobrasil Biennial in 2023. Now, a few logistical notes as we begin. This program will last for approximately 1 hour. If you would like to ask a question, feel free to use the Q&A function at any time by clicking the Q&A button, located at the bottom of your screen, to type your question. Please note that this program is being recorded, so your question will be recorded as well. If there's time, our speakers will answer questions during the Q&A at the end of the program. Finally, I encourage you to learn more about upcoming public programs and to purchase tickets to visit the museum's exhibition at our website, newmuseum.org. Now, without further ado, I turn the conversation over to Bernardo.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Andrew, very much. And thanks actually to all of our team who has been working so much to put this public program together. I'm Bernardo Mosqueira, ISLAA Curatorial Fellow at the New Museum, and this is Software Hard Stone, but I know a change is going to come. This is the second roundtable about the triennial. We have 3 more roundtables to come in the next weeks. The first one about called The Fluid City, the second called Mediated Bodies, and the third Colonial Legacies. You can check our program online on newmuseum.org, and you can watch the first roundtable, a great interview with Margot Norton and Jamila James, the curators of this triennial at newmuseum.tv. Today, we're going to be discussing some ideas around the title of this triennial, and the proverb that inspired this title. And we're going to be in conversation with, as Andrew said, Laurie Kang and Gabriela Mureb, who are two of the artists participating in the Triennial, and Raphael Fonseca, who is also a collaborator in the Triennial in a way, because we invited him to be interviewing Gabriela in our catalog. I'm very excited to be chatting with you. I'm not going to introduce you guys, actually, because Andrew already did it, and each one of you are going to do that. But I'm going to give a quick background about the relationship, between this title and this expression and the Triennial. Different from other big shows or biennials, triennials, etc., the research for this exhibition didn't start from a theme or a concept, but from the meeting between the curators of the show and artists. The research started in mid-2019, so it was before the pandemic. Margot and Jamila were traveling around the world, doing studio visits and meeting artists. And they started to notice some tendencies, some repetitions, variations, some echoes all around the world. I remember that in the first meeting that we had about the Triennial, still in 2019 or beginning of 2020 maybe, I remember Margot using the expression like, we're noticing something kind of post-apocalyptic, and then the pandemic came and things changed completely. But the artists that they were looking into were already dealing with those issues, and they were noticing some constant interest in different ways in the ideas of like dynamic structures, inevitable instability, mutation, transmutation, malleability, and different ways of dealing with time, different ways of understanding, experiencing, narrating, conceiving time. So if you didn't see the show yet, and whenever you come, you're gonna notice that there is this kind of approach to the mystery, I guess, the mystery as this thing that gives time to beings. So there's a lot of experimentation also in ways of understanding this mystery and also understanding how to conceive and narrate time. And I guess Gabriela and Laurie are two amazing examples in that sense. So when I started last year, we were already in the middle of the pandemic collaborating with Margot and Jamila. I offered to do a kind of a research, a kind of a conceptual cartography or a study about possible different genealogies about these expressions of Torah Hearthstone. And it's important to say also that in one of those, when they were traveling, Margot went to Brazil, to Rio, and was in a studio visit with Gabriela, who's here with us today. And Gabriela was showing a piece and one of her machines. And to talk about this piece, Gabriela used this expression, which is a very famous, popular saying, like a proverb in Brazil, which is água mole, pedra dura, tanto bate, fura, which would be something like soft water on hard stone, it hits until it bores a hole. And then when Margot heard that, after researching artists for like 1 year, she was like, oh my God, this has a lot to do with the things that we've been learning. She came back to the US, shared that with Jamila, and that became something. Then I started like collaborating with them. I developed this research. I'm not gonna share the entire research here, so you have to get a catalog to access that. But what we did back then was to try to find, to go very back in the past into different parts of the planet to see moments in which different cultures and languages approach this relationship, this productive relationship, this transformative relationship between water and stone as something that could teach us something about us, about time, about life, etc. So in one of the moments of this research, we went back to the 1st century in Rome, where we found Ovid, the Roman poet, saying things like, quid magis est saxo durum, quid mollis unda, durum também molli saxa cavanturaque, which means something like, what is softer, what is harder than stone and softer than wave, even so, the stone, the stone is still hollowed by water. Then I like reading a Hiberson, I found out that actually Ovid was copying Lucretius, but who was saying something that a little bit prior to that. Then another part of our research went to the Taoteaching, which I hope to discuss a little bit with Laurie about that, in which we could find expressions like the softest things, the thing in the universe overcomes the hardest things in the universe, or under heaven, nothing is more soft and yielding than water, yet for attacking the solid, there's nothing bad. And then in another part of this research, we went to some Yoruba or Yoruba diasporic cultures and found the story of the Ojiji, which is this stone that is transformed by water into a source of life and of life and power. This is one of the myths of the creation of the universe. So from that, we understood that maybe this expression was not so much about finding means to get specific ends, or like hope or perseverance, which would be a little bit tricky in that context in which like Trump was the president, Bolsonaro was president. So we didn't want it to be like a message of hope or perseverance that things are going to change, but more like something engaging of understanding ourselves as change. So having said that, just to give a little background, I'm going to invite the first of, so just so you know, now each one of the participants is going to introduce themselves and introduce their practices and maybe some relations between their practices and this general theme. And from that, after that, we're going to have a more collective conversation, and hopefully in the end, we're going to be able to answer to some questions. The first person that I'm going to invite to come join me is Gabriela Mureb.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Bernardo. Thank you, Andrew. I'm Gabriela Mureb. I have 3 works on the show. There are 3 machines. I think you're going to see some images there. So in the 4th floor, there's this one, machine number 4, machine attached to the floor, and it has this mechanism that keeps repeatedly hitting this stone, and the stone moves a little bit out of its axis, but it never falls. It just comes back again, and again, and this one comes back again. And it was really amazing to install this work and to hear how it related to this place, because when the stone hits the floor, it makes a sound, a very low sound that you can hear from the whole building, and it actually vibrates the ground a little bit when you get close to it. So I think it was a really amazing surprise to see how strong the noise got, because it was like probably the noisiest it got from all the times that I showed this work. And then in the stairway that connects the 4th floor to the 3rd floor, you see 2 pieces. One of them is called Untitled Breeze, which is this mechanism that makes the movement of a motor really, really, really slow. So it spins this iron pole, which is covered with grease that I got from junkyard. So it's grease that has been used in other industrial machines. So it spins really, really, really slowly. That's this one. And moving down a little bit, there's machine number 3, belt, which is a system of pulleys and a belt that are put in motion by an electric motor. So this is a very basic movement of system for industrial machines. So it makes a kind of a gigantic loop, and it is the louder and the most energetic of this the 3 works that are in the exhibition. And These works are part of a long series of machines that I have been doing for a long time, since around 2011 or 2010, when I started actually thinking about it and thinking about these ideas. And in these works, I usually use industrial materials and also sometimes used parts of old machines, like used motors that were part of some other machines that I buy in junkyards and reuse it to create my own machines. And they're usually very simple machines, very simple mechanisms. They're not high-tech machines. So they're basically mechanisms of repetition of a certain gesture, so the work is this also the functioning of the machine. It's not only the steady fixed sculpture, but it's also the operation, the continuous movement, the rhythm, the sound, the relation with space. So the work is all the time that is being exhibited it is turned on, and it only exists when it is turned on. So I like to think of these objects as objects that are mechanically making some specific gesture last in time. And before I started doing these machines in 2011, I was doing performance. And I think it is important to say that because it shapes a lot of who I am as an artist. And I think it also gives another perspective on these machines because they are very related to the body. These actions I used to do were also very repetitive actions. I was thinking about continuous processes, trying to sustain certain amount of tension for a long time. And so making these machines in a way open possibilities of experimenting with time and with duration, among other things. And there's also something about performance, which is when you do a performance, you never really know what's going to happen. There's always some uncertainty to it. And this unknowing, the presence of this doubt was also always something really important to me, having this kind of risk, this permanent risk present. And about the title of the exhibition, what happened is that when Margot visited my studio, we were talking about some of my works, and especially some more delicate works. This one, machine number 4, but also machine number 1, which was also a very delicate mechanism. And we were talking about how, small gestures can have a strength in time through repetition. And so I remember this proverb and told Margot about it as a kind of a metaphor, to think about the work. And she got really excited about it because it had a lot to do with things she was already thinking about for the triennial. So she asked me to send it to her and translate it. And it ended up in the title of the show, which I think is such a beautiful title. And so it's not that the work is based on the proverb, but more the proverb is a way of making some aspects of the work visible, and about, things about ideas about repetition and persistence and resilience, and how to make this small gesture, which is in this work apparently a failing gesture, can become very powerful through this accumulation of time. And I also like to think about it as a kind of a very long, continuous sculptural gesture that will be transforming the stone into something else, but in another scale of time. So a sculptural gesture that would take a really, really, really long time to be done. Yeah, I think that's it.
Amazing, thank you, Gabriela. I invite Laurie to come join us and introduce yourself.
Yeah, it's really an honor to be on this panel and also to be included in this show that Margot and Jamila put together with so much care and attention. So I'm just going to present a few images of my work that try to speak to the foundations of my practice and things that I've been interested in for the last few years. So I work in sculpture, photography, and site-responsive installation. And my work thinks about the body as an ongoing process, or the body as an environment that is always entangled with other bodies and environments. And so kind of breaking the binary of inside and outside, or self and other. And for the past few years, I've been making these kind of permeable wall installations, or these porous wall installations. One of which is in the Triennial. It's a new one that I've made there. But this one here is called a body knots. And what you're looking at is flex track, steel studs, and unfixed and unprocessed photographic films and papers. So, and spherical magnets that hold all the paper and film up. And yeah, I guess the paper and the film remain sensitive to the light, and so are in a continual state of change. And I'm really presenting these works as like a hybrid between sculpture and installation, or an embodied image, and architecture, and thinking about themselves as bodies as well. Like, so the track and the papers become like flesh and bone. And I use a lot of building materials and industrial materials as well, thinking about ideas of, world making, space shaping, the idea that spaces aren't neutral, that containers are not neutral, that what holds something affects the thing it holds, and vice versa. And I really think that Octavia Butler said it best, and I return to her religion, earth seed, often. And I think it's applicable to the show in general as well. When she writes that all that you touch, you change, all that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. We can go to the next slide, actually. This show is called Eidetic Tides, and this installation is called Endo. And this is using another kind of flexible track that I use, as well as the steel studs. And with this show, I used only film. And these films were either repurposed from previous wall installations or tanned on my studio windows for varying lengths of time. So the ones that are repurposed from other installations have other spaces embedded and imbued within them. They become carriers in that sense, that they hold the environment and the charges of other places, and then they kind of go on to inflect the next spaces with that charge. And in general, with these installations, a lot of what I'm thinking about is this idea of soft monumentality, or what it means that when materials or when structures are proposed that are actually inherently collapsible or reiterable or malleable and sensitive and in a continuous state of change. Next slide, please. And I guess as much as I've been building up these walls over the last several years, I'm also very interested in enacting a non-linear cycle in my work that aims to continuously build up, break down, and rebuild in a very non-linear fashion. So this was a show I did called Pole, which is a Korean word for worm or pest or bug. And it was entirely a floor-based show. It was horizontal. Everything was quite low to the ground. And I really wanted to explore this idea of like the latency of materiality, or what I was thinking about as the larval quality of materials, kind of pre-transformation, pre-use, and that as a very embodied and potential full space. So this is just a stack of the flexi track that I shaped on site, as well as some sand and cast aluminum objects like shiso leaf and lotus root, which I return to often in my practice, and are also included kind of embedded within the studs of the Triennial installation that I've made. And yeah, I think about these foods that I've metabolized numerous times within my lifetime as kind of having become calcified in my body, becoming like, part of my own internal scaffold or skeleton, or very structuring. And then when I display them, it's kind of like a kind of excretion of viscera or my organs. Okay. And yeah, I was thinking about the figure of the worm as this figure of resilience and transformation, and my own biography of my father and his mom having been worm pickers when first immigrating to Canada from Korea. And the last two slides, please. Lastly, I just wanted to talk about the figure of the vessel or the carrier or holder, which, you know, it could be argued that the walls themselves are also carriers or vessels, but this is a more literal expression of this interest of mine, thinking about the carriers that hold, that gather, that care for, that work over. And this is an installation called Mother. It's comprised of 30 something or so stainless steel mixing bowls in both domestic and industrial scales. And we can go to the last slide. And it's filled with things like pigmented silicones, clay, cast aluminum, some organic objects, as well as these hats that are scattered around. And I'm really thinking about, you know, the many mothers that make a body that are both human and non-human, as well as mother as a fermentation starter. And this is a way for me to like parasitize my own identity. There's a lot of autobiographical elements in this work that are made abstract, and, you know, presenting the body as a metabolization as well as a regurgitation in many ways. And lastly, I'll just say that this work is actually being presented, co-presented by Franz Kafka Gallery and Helena Ann Rather Gallery tonight. For anyone who's in New York, it opens from 6 to 8 p.m.
Thank you very much. And I invite Rafa to join us.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for the invitation to be here. So I'm very thankful to Andrew, to Bernardo, to all the new museum team, and of course, to Jamila and Margot. And I'd like to congratulate them for the amazing show they created and all the amazing reviews they're already receiving these days. So I was thinking how to collaborate in this panel, this very informal roundtable. And since I'm not one of the artists in the project, I thought of perhaps sharing, quickly 2 projects. One I did, one I'm doing at this moment. But also I was thinking and discussing previously with Bernardo and Gabriela about the association between Brazil and the soft water hard stone proverb. So I found this funny, at least in my opinion, funny GIF on the internet, where I say, sou brasileiro e não desisto nunca, which is a phrase that's very said in Brazil, especially I think in the millennial generation, like my generation and Gabriela and Bernardo's generation. So translating would be, I'm a Brazilian and I never give up. So of course, here they're playing with the fact that Brazil lost to Germany in the World Cup in 2014. It lost 7-1. So this idea that Brazil, when organized the World Cup in the country, the country would receive, would be the winner of the World Cup. So anyway, that didn't happen. So this meme, for example, is playing with it. And I remember all my life, especially with Rio from Rio, right, in this table, I feel that the idea that Rio struggles with many issues and the people are able to go through them, etc. There's some type of curious pride in battling against all the struggles in Brazil. So I even remember, of course, of Elliot Sica, the famous phrase from The Adversity We Live that he wrote in a work in 65, but also wrote in a text in 67. So it's interesting to see how this proverb can become somehow an icon of certain ideas of Brazilianness. But at the same time, just like Bernardo writes in his text for the catalog, it's interesting to remember of Ovid, remember of other appearances of the proverb and its main idea sorry, just move my headphones. Also in this idea of resistance and resilience and insistence also. Can you move to the next one, please? Next image. Yeah, thanks. So I thought about sharing very briefly about talking a bit about this project I created recently at Hausnerkunst in Munich, an exhibition co-created by the amazing Anna Schneider, and it's an exhibition named Sweat, because I was thinking how also this idea of resistance is something pretty common in exhibitions of course, of contemporary art, and how I feel that, of course, many curators are interested in looking at how artists are dealing with different types of struggles in different places of the world also. So Sweat is an exhibition that is still open until January. And it's also an exhibition that deals with the idea of pleasure and how pleasure can be seen as a form of resistance. So I'm pretty interested in not only talking about the traumas of life and of many different cultures, but also how the fact that we are alive by itself, it can be seen as an act of resistance. So here's a shot of the exhibition. So the next image, please. So in this next slide, we have this work by Pasita Abad, an artist that was born in the Philippines in 46. She passed away in 2004, and she came to the US in the 70s. And there she painted and she kept on working as a seamstress, and she did this work where she's making this mix between painting and textiles and very different types of textiles. And this is a work called LA Liberty from '92. And I think it's very interesting because it's also a way to think about resistance and resilience, but in a non-literal way. I mean, she's celebrating freedom. She paints this brown Statue of Liberty. So I thought, just like the exhibition is not literal in the way it invited the artists and selected the works, I thought that this work also dialogues somehow with the idea of soft water hard stone. Next slide, please. Here I have another shot of the exhibition. On the right, you have this installation by Guadalupe Rosales, an artist from the US, from Los Angeles. And Lupe, she has been researching the last year. She has this Instagram account named Veteranas and Rucas, and she has been researching around the idea of resistance again of the Latinx community, especially in East Los Angeles. Next slide, please. So she has this big archive of visual culture, especially from flyers of parties that happen, of photos, also of albums, of objects. And when she shows this work, she creates this type of, big archive of material. And again, I think just like Bernardo says in his text for the catalog, the title of the exhibition is also dealing with the idea of time, and also the idea of mutation and metamorphosis. And I think it's interesting to look at an artist dealing with the idea of archive and how this archive by itself can be seen as a soft water in dialogue with the hard stone. So anyway, this curatorial project is still going on, but I wanted just to finish to show two artworks from another project I'm developing at the moment. We can talk more about it later if anyone wants to talk about it. Because at the moment, I'm organizing an exhibition with other 6 curators from Brazil. I'm going to type their names in the chat later. And it's a project that has to do with the 100 years anniversary of a Week of Modern Art that happened in São Paulo in 1922. I mean, it's one of the many events related to modern art in Brazil, but became historiographically the big event. And then we as curators, we are organizing an exhibition that tried to show other ideas of modern art in Brazil in the same period, between the beginning of the 20th century and the 60s. And I'm just trying to say that I've been thinking, reflecting about this total conversation now, how curating can also be seen as, the soft water in relation with the hard stone. So here I brought only 2 examples. This artist, Chico da Silva, an indigenous artist, who was born in 1910 and passed away in 1985. And during the 40s, 50s, 60s, he does images like this, where he's making this fusion between landscape, fantasy, different types of animals, and how, of course, an indigenous artist in Brazil in this moment is by itself can be seen as an act of resistance. And then the final example, this artist named Miguel Guilherme, an artist that was active. He was born in 1902 and he passed away in 1995. And this work where he writes self-taught, because he was an artist and he was self-taught, and he used to paint, big publicity in walls in the countryside of Brazil, and how he affirms this resistance. And I thought how interesting it is to see, is a figure taking of himself, itself of the stone of the landscape, let's say like that. So I feel that this idea of resistance can be seen not only in contemporary art, but also in modern art, in any historical period. And I think also, just to finish, that the exhibition brings it in itself, not only because of the works that are there, but also because I feel that the curators, they were also inviting artists that not only from big galleries, that not only for big cities engaged with producing contemporary art. So perhaps the way the exhibition was built also can be related with this idea of our Brazilian proverb of soft water, hard stone. So yeah, to start, I think that'll be it. And here we are to questions, comments, and more.
I was here listening to you, feeling so happy, so lucky actually for having this opportunity for the past months to be collaborating in this project that Margot and Jamila have been like that literally spent more than 3 years developing, together with Jeanette Bischoffs, my dear colleague and the Curatorial Fellow, tireless and genius colleague, and it's so exciting to hear more about your works and how you think about in relation to this thing. I have one question. I have some questions, but maybe to repeat the same order, I'm going to start with a question to Gabriela. I was thinking about batedor, your another machine. I think it's called batedor, right? Or how would it be? Maybe the heater or something like that in the translation, which is another machine, which is a little box that hits constantly the wall of the institution, and how this work maybe would point to a kind of a more institutional critique approach, I would say, or more literally. And there's something interesting about translation that happens with this machine that you showed to us, ground machine number 3 or 4. 4, ground, which is in Portuguese, ground. The title of the piece is Máquina número 4, chão, and chão is ground. But ground is also like in relation to the act of grinding. And it's interesting that in this relationship between the stone and the machine, probably, even if we are pointing to the possibility of the machine being maybe pierced by this piece, probably the machine is going to break before that. But something interesting that happened in this installation for me, which was like a kind of a surprise, is that what is being ground is the floor. So it kind of mixes up a little bit this binary relation that like one transform another, but like being part of a general transformation, which is more, I guess, how we are understanding transformation in this show. So I would love to hear a little bit how you think about time and transformation in your work, and how do you see this installation of this piece at the new museum right now?
Well, for sure, the the ground being the floor being grounded, as you said, it could be also translated for the title of the work. It was a kind of a surprise to happen in that intensity, but I have before showed this work, and the stone always makes some kind of something on the floor, but I mean the machine, the mechanical part is drilled on the floor. So it in order to the work to function, it needs already to make this makes a hole in the floor of the museum or the gallery or the institution. I have a video of machine number 1 here. Maybe I can show it so it we can see it. Can you listen to it? Yeah. So this is it's a really small machine. It's like this is a little small box. The mechanism is really similar to the stone one. but this is hitting directly on the wall. So the kind of transformation it makes, it's really, really delicate, you know, and I actually like it to be that way because it makes the whole action, and you know, it's a mechanism that is being fed by electricity, and it's turned on all the way, you know, like the eight hours a day, and it makes it more absurd that it's not actually almost doing nothing. But I thought that maybe I could show some other work that were more intense in this kind of relation with the exhibition space. And then not this one, it's this one. This is an installation I did, installation / performance I did in a theater, inside a theater of Rio de Janeiro. In the Multiplicidade Festival, we put 20 gasoline engines inside of the theater, and so I will just put the video. Wait. Here in the beginning, you can see that we had this mask, like oxygen masks, in the seats of the theater, and you know, glasses, protection glasses, because when we put the engines inside the theater, and when I turned it on for the first time, I realized, I mean, I was expecting it to be harsh, but it was almost impossible to stay inside, you know, without these protection masks and glasses. So this was way more aggressive kind of relation of the work with the space and the work with, you know, the people who are there to see the work, because you know, it's 20 gasoline motors turned on, you know, the exploding gasoline for the whole time, you know, producing toxic gases, and it was a small theater. So, but it was really nice that it is a very risky work and dangerous work and aggressive work, but at the same time, we had the festival, the curator, the producer, the manager of the theater, everybody jumped in the idea, you know, without knowing exactly what was going to happen, and also the audience, because they had to sign, you know, a contract saying that they would not sue the theater for, you know, any harm. So it was such an aggressive and risky and situation, and at the same time, the institution and the visitors, just like me, wanted to experience this kind of you know, aggressive relation with the work, and you know, to risk something, to experience something that was very singular and peculiar, you know, that, you know, and kind of rare to happen, really. I don't know if I answered your question, actually.
Yeah, no, of course. And thank you very much for sharing that. I love this piece, and I guess in a way it helped us to understand the relationship, how you moved from performance to the machines, I guess, which is important. I have a question to Laurie also. Like in our in a previous conversation, you shared two very beautiful and with me. One about a stone that you were carrying during the installation. I would love if you could tell us that story. And also when we were discussing about software hard stone and the relationship between stones and water, you also mentioned, as you've been like studying Chinese medicine and Tao Te Ching and acupuncture, etc. You brought some a very beautiful some very beautiful ideas from the relationship between yin and yang. So maybe if you could talk about those two things, I think it would be really amazing.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, so the story of my personal stone is connected to, when Margot and Jamila first invited me to be a part of the show, they shared the title as well as the concept behind the title with me. And it really like struck a personal note with me because this proverb was shared with me as well in grad school by one of my main mentors there, Fia Backstrom. In my very first studio visit with her, she shared something similar about, I was working with materials like photo materials that were unfixed and continually sensitive. And she was speaking to how we were talking about time and change. And she brought up, a rock changes with time over water. And that really stuck with me. And I'd kind of almost forgotten it until this invitation. So it was really nice to return to that moment. But she also gifted my whole cohort. We each received a little stone from her that she found by the water herself at the end of our MFA time there. And, it was for her, to us, it was kind of this reminder to be brave. And yeah, I've kept the rock with me. I actually installed the whole Triennial show with the stone in my pocket as well. So that's my stone story. But also when we were talking leading up to this discussion, we were both talking about how, you write so beautifully in the catalog in your essay about this idea of transmutation and, kind of expanding this idea of stone and water, being like constantly presenting water as kind of as the ultimate state or the ultimate element. But I think in some ways, this proverb can be turned on its head and it has that kind of inherent paradoxical quality built into it. And so I've been studying Chinese medicine for over a year now. And, at the root of that is yin and yang theory. And there's 4 tenets to yin and yang. One is of mutual opposition, that yin and yang inherently oppose each other. They're binaries. The second is of mutual creation. They create and make each other. The third is mutual consumption, that they're constantly consuming each other. And the fourth is mutual intertransformation. So they're constantly shifting in and out of each other. And I guess I thought water is more yin, it's wet, it's dark, it's heavy, it's yielding, and a stone is more yang because it's fixed and hard. But you could easily, if you start comparing the sun with a stone, the stone all of a sudden becomes yin and the sun becomes yang. So there's this ongoing transformation within it. And I think that we ourselves can be stones too, that are constantly being, affected by what's around us and changing in relation to that.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. This is so beautiful. Thank you very much. And Rafa, Raphael, you didn't mention, but you created a show in 2014 that was related to this expression too, which was the first Bienal do Barro in Caruaru, in different ways, in different contexts, and unrelated. But it would be nice if you could say how that expression was important for you back then.
Cool. No, great. It's great to remember about the show. So in 2014, there's a very important artist from Brazil named Carlos Melo. He created this project. It's a very peculiar biennial because he sees this biennial also as his own artistic project. So he creates this project named the First Clay Biennial. What happens is that you have this city in the state of Pernambuco in the northeast of Brazil, where we have this very important artist named Mestre Vitalino. You can translate perhaps as Master Vitalino, I think, in English. And he got very famous in the 40s, 50s, because he was one of the first artists in Brazil to be associated, with the invention of the idea of popular art or folk art. And he got very famous because he's very famous, of course, until nowadays, because he used to do everything using clay. He used to do lots of ceramic pieces, very tiny pieces, but at the same time, he was experimenting different conceptions of sculpture through clay. And then Caruaru, the city where the biennial happened, is a city that's pretty known because it has one of the biggest centers of crafts in the whole Brazil, perhaps in the whole world. So, for example, when you enter into the neighborhood where Vitalino was born and where he used to live, you have a big banner saying, "Welcome to the biggest area in the world dedicated to ceramics and clay." So I created this show there. The idea initially was to have only works dealing with clay, but quickly, of course, the history of the city and many other issues popped up. And then after lots of discussion with Carlos, with the artists, etc., we thought that perhaps, softwater hard stone could be like an interesting concept for the exhibition, because it also responded to the struggles of the city. How to deal with the memory of Vitalino, this artist, how the community of craft makers, artists, how they deal with it also, and how they were still struggling. They have some very, precarious structure there. And at the same time, how the artists also from the exhibition are dealing not only with clay itself, but also with history. How someone that's from the region or not from there is able or feels, invited to do something that dialogues with the many stories and histories from the region. So yeah, basically that's it. And it was a pretty interesting exhibition. For me, I think, to do it, to organize it. And at the same time, just to finish, was curious to see how many artists also felt interested in doing things with clay. Artists are not that used to do that. So some who had some projects that deal precisely with clay, and other artists prefer to deal with Vitalino or to deal with other issues from the city. And anyway, we have the second edition of the Clay Biennial, and it seems that next year the third edition is about to come.
Amazing. One more question, but I don't know. Maybe I don't know if we only have a few minutes left. I don't know if someone has a question, or otherwise I can share one more question. We don't have any here yet, so I think there is something that is very interesting in the work of actually the three of you, is that the works are very aware of the body of the audience. So in Gabriela's case, there is this machine that is kind of performing to the audience and kind of triggering experience of mirroring, maybe, or spectral meditative experiences. In the case of Laurie, there are those walls, literally, that kind of create kind of space for those bodies. And even Rafa, in the project that you mentioned about pleasure, is also kind of talking about the experience, the embodied experience of the audience too. So, and what I think is interesting about software hard stone is that the expression is not so much about necessarily about stones and water, or water and stones, but about our ability or capacity, collective capacity actually, to be together with transformation. So it's about our capacity of observing and learning and sharing knowledge. So in the last minutes that we have, I would love to hear from you. How do you imagine the relationship between the audience and your pieces, precisely with this idea of like transformation and time in mind?
Okay. So you asked about how I imagine this relation between our works and the public in this transformative way. I like to think that the works, they are a kind of mediation between the ideas and the intentions and the the forces that built the work, and the person who is watching it. So the work would be like a kind of a mediation that will make this some idea, something last in the body of the audience. So I like to think it's as a kind of a passage. Of course, each person will relate it to it and make new relations, from their point of view and perspective. But I think there's something physical that goes through the work, like the vibration and rhythm and noise, and all these things communicate in a way, so it's I think it's a way of almost touching the audience through the work. So the work being active, the work being this active operation, it's also the work being an agent of constant action and transformation, in this relation with the audience. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just speak really briefly, similar to Gabriela's, which definitely there's like a visceral sensation when I encounter your work in the show, and it's been so nice to encounter it in the show. But I think, my work, I think in many ways attempts to trigger a visceral response from the viewer. So you feel it from your inside out first. It's affect forward. And then, the wall works that they have the possibility of, when you're standing on one side, you yourself can perceive another body or another person on the other side. So within that, there's a recognition of other, which implies a recognition of self as well, which brings it back to the body of the viewer.
Yeah, no, that's a good reflection also, I think. Since we have a fellow Canadian here in our round table, I'm gonna quote Arcade Fire, right? My body is a cage that keeps me from dancing with the one I love, and my mind holds the key. I mean, I think that in my project, they are pretty obsessed with the body. I mean, in very different ways. But as Bernardo knows pretty well, I don't think I'm that, that hedonistic curator, that the tropical shows and think the body as a party, but then the body really can be seen as a cage. But anyway, as a curator, I think that it's really important to think about projects like the new museum exhibition, of course, that invite the body of the public to many different situations. Have like tiny stuff, huge things, video, performance. Anyway, it's important that the public feel challenged and intrigued by what's going on in that room, that they don't enter the room in the middle of it, they can see it all, So yeah, so certainly the body is an issue.
Can I just say something? Sorry. Just say something. It's just that I said about this connection between, the body maybe of the artist and the body of the audience. And I don't mean that the body is like the origin of the work, and not at all. But it's just that for me, I think of the body, not in this separate way, body mind. It's just this whole complex thing, but it's just a place of the first where I first listen to the work, to the ideas. So I think it's the body is where the ideas first appear to me, and I listen to it, and hopefully the work will be able to amplify, this noise to other people. So I think that's more this.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. So thank you guys. Just as an answer to Rafa, me as a hedonistic career. No, I'm saying that. And as we have 3 Brazilian people in this panel, I might quote Caetano Veloso: "If you hold a stone, hold it in your hand. If you feel the weight, you'll never be late to understand." And well, I'm very happy to have had this conversation with you. I hope everyone enjoyed as much as I did. And for our audience, whoever is watching us, please connect to the next panels. You can check, as I said, our entire public program on newmuseum.org. Thank you very much, Gabriela, Laurie, Rafa, and Andrew, and I hope to see you all very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.